Have you ever been, sitting on a plane, maybe looking out the window, and just wondered about the journey of that incredible machine itself? Not just where it's flying, but how it actually got there. Like who bought it, who really owns it. It's easy to assume the airline painted on the side owns every single plane in its fleet, right? But the truth is, well, it's far more complex and frankly, a lot more interesting. Because beneath that livery, there's this hidden engine of global commerce, and it's quietly dictating the future of air travel. It's the aviation leasing industry. Today, we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating world. We're drawing insights from two detailed industry reports from August 2025, focusing particularly on one called Aviation Leasing Industry, a comprehensive market report and outlook. Our mission, really, is to pull out the most important nuggets from these expert analyses, give you a shortcut to understanding this essential, often overlooked part of global commerce. We're going to uncover how this powerful market is shaping pretty much everything from the age of the planes you're flying to maybe even the price of your next ticket.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how you've got these two seemingly opposing forces, but they're both equally powerful and they're converging right now. So on one side, you have this incredibly resilient, booming global demand for air travel. People want to fly, they really do, and they're flying more than ever. But then on the other side, you have a persistently constrained aircraft supply chain, structurally limited,
Yeah.
and this creates this, well, unique and, let's be honest, quite lucrative landscape for aviation leasing right now. It's this dynamic tension that's really shaping everything in the skies above and in the boardrooms below, too.
Exactly. And whether you're planning your next vacation or maybe you're keenly following global economics or you're just curious about how the world moves, this deep dive, I think, will give you some serious aha moments. We'll reveal why understanding this industry is so crucial for grasping how airlines manage their fleets, why ticket prices might be climbing, and maybe even the pace at which we're tackling those critical environmental goals. So yeah, get ready to see air travel through a completely new lens.
1.1. The Lessor's Market. A global overview of a resilient industry.
All right, let's unpack this central concept that the reports really emphasize it right from the start. The industry is described as a lessor's market. Now that sounds powerful, obviously, but what does it really mean in practical terms? For the airlines, and why is this the dynamic right now?
It's a really critical distinction, yeah. And it signifies this fundamental shift in power. A lessor's market basically means that the leverage, the bargaining power, it's decisively shifted to the aircraft leasing companies.
Yeah.
The lessors, they're kind of holding all the cards right now. They're dictating terms, benefiting from these highly favorable market conditions. And this dynamic, it's not accidental. It's born from this really powerful, sustained, and frankly quite surprising recovery in global air travel demand after the pandemic. People are traveling again enthusiastically. But here's the catch. This soaring demand is colliding head-on with that persistent, structurally constrained aircraft supply chain. From the OEMs, the manufacturers, think of it like a housing market where absolutely everyone wants to buy, but very few new homes are being built. What happens? Prices skyrocket.
Right, so same principle, but for massive flying machines.
Exactly. In aviation, it means more people want to fly, but there just aren't enough new planes being delivered to meet that demand. So this creates a seller's market, but for the aircraft lessors, it drives up valuations, drives up lease rates for, well, virtually all fleet assets. Doesn't matter if they're brand new, cutting-edge, next-gen aircraft, or even older, previous-generation models that, might otherwise be heading towards retirement soon. The reports really highlight the industry's incredible resilience, too, and its strategic adaptation after all the global crises. Leasing isn't just an alternative financing option for airlines anymore. It's cemented its role. It's an indispensable strategic part of global fleet management. Airlines, simply put, have to lease to maintain or certainly to expand their operations.
So the key insight here is that the global rebound in air travel, combined with these pretty significant delays in aircraft manufacturing, has basically handed unprecedented power to the leasing companies. They're not just financiers anymore. They're almost like the gatekeepers to airlines even being able to fly.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, gatekeepers. And the scale of this power shift is, well, it's enormous. The reports give us some pretty compelling figures that really bring home just how large and influential this market has become as of mid-2025.
Okay, I'm ready for the numbers. Give us the scale. How big are we actually talking here?
Let's put some hard data behind this. So the total commercial aircraft fleet globally, estimated at around 35,550 units. That's a massive number of aircraft crisscrossing our skies. But here's the kicker. Out of those, a staggering 13,295 aircraft are currently on lease. and that figure represents a 3% increase year over year, which indicates this continued and actually growing reliance on leasing.
Wow. Okay, so nearly 4 out of every 10 planes you see flying aren't actually owned by the airline operating them.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It really highlights how central leasing has become. It's moved from what maybe people thought was just an ancillary financing tool to, well, a core strategic necessity for airlines all over the world. It's like renting a huge chunk of your essential business equipment instead of owning it outright.
Precisely. That 37.3% leased penetration rate, that's a truly critical metric. It's testament to the enduring strategic value of the leasing model. It offers airlines flexibility, sure, but also capital preservation in what is a hugely capital-intensive industry. And financially, the market's valuation is immense. In 2025, estimates put it somewhere between USD $197.88 billion and USD $207.1 billion. Looking further ahead, the long-term growth projections are even more robust. They're forecasting a near doubling. One source suggests the market could reach up to USD $397.21 billion by 2034. That's growing at an average of about 8.05% annually. Another source, even more optimistic, projects could hit USD of $565.1 billion by 2034. That's an 11.8% compound annual growth rate. Huge numbers.
That's quite a range, though, in those long-term forecasts, almost a $170 billion difference at the high end. What does the disparity tell us about how experts are viewing this market? Is it like a sign of uncertainty or?
That's a perceptive question, and yes, it does tell us something important. That slight discrepancy in the valuation figures isn't really a sign of flawed analysis. It actually underscores the inherent volatility.
Yeah.
And also the absence of a single, perfectly standardized valuation metric in an industry that's so heavily influenced by big macroeconomic shifts, unpredictable geopolitical events, and of course, those persistent disruptive supply chain challenges we keep mentioning. The key insight here is that while the market is undeniably booming and strategically vital, its future valuation is just so sensitive to global events and external pressures. So even expert analysts wisely rely on these broad, maybe slightly conservative ranges, rather than trying to pin down a single precise data point. It's a powerful industry for sure, but inherently dynamic and volatile.
I see. Okay, so range-based analysis is the way to go. But what is fundamentally driving all this lessor's market, these rising values? You mentioned a severe supply-demand imbalance. Let's dig into what's really causing that.
Right. The fundamental driver is indeed a severe, almost unprecedented supply-demand imbalance, and it largely comes down to the manufacturers, the OEMs. This is a direct consequence of ongoing OEM production delays and a staggering record-high order backlog for new aircraft. We're talking about over 17,000 aircraft currently on order globally. Now, to put that into perspective, this massive backlog would take approximately 14 years to clear at the current production rates. Imagine waiting 14 years for a car you ordered today.
Yeah, no kidding.
For an airline trying to plan its fleet for the next decade, this is just a monumental challenge.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. A 14-year wait list for new planes. That's not just a minor delay, that's a fundamental capacity shortage. It forces airlines to completely rethink their entire long-term fleet strategy and relying more heavily and probably more expensively on the leasing market, right? It feels like a structural problem, not just a temporary blip.
Exactly. This backlog isn't just a number. It's the primary catalyst for widespread capacity shortages across the globe. And consequently, it's the driver for the surge in demand for virtually every available aircraft, whether it's fresh off the factory floor or has, seen years of service already. And it's important to note the market structure here, too. It's incredibly concentrated. The reports highlight the dominance of just a few key players. AerCap, for instance, leads by fleet size. They have a massive portfolio, 1,669 aircraft as of January 2025.
Yep.
Then you've got Avalon with 633 and SMBC Aviation Capital with 611. These are truly global titans. However, when we look at market share by portfolio value in 2024, the picture shifts slightly, and it reveals a more nuanced strategy among the lessors. AerCap still leads with 3.7%, sure, but then we see Air Lease Corporation at 1.4%, Avalon at 1.2%, BOC Aviation at 1.1%, and SMBC Aviation Capital at 1.0%.
That's interesting. So why the difference between just counting planes, the fleet size, and the actual portfolio value rankings? Does it mean some lessors are playing a different kind of game?
Yeah, this raises an important question, and it definitely reveals a strategic focus on asset quality and cutting-edge technology for some, rather than just sheer scale. Lessors like Air Lease Corporation and BOC Aviation, while they might have smaller fleets than AerCap in terms of number of aircraft, they command a higher average value per aircraft. They achieve this by strategically focusing on acquiring new, high-value, next-generation models, often through direct orders from the OEMs, and then placing them on these long-term lease commitments. It's a strategy focused on maximizing the value per asset, leveraging that superior fuel efficiency and the advanced features. It's about quality and technological advantage over pure quantity for these key players. This allows them to generate higher revenue and profit margins from a comparatively smaller fleet. It reflects a more capital-intensive approach, maybe, but potentially more rewarding.
I see a fascinating strategic difference among the leasing giants themselves. Okay, so with that detailed picture of the market's immense scale and its core drivers firmly established, let's zoom in on the actual planes. What does this profound shortage mean for the types of aircraft flying today, their age, and critically how they're being utilized? Number 2, the evolving global fleet. Age, composition, and utilization.
Right, let's break down the current fleet composition. So narrow-body jets, these are your workhorses, like the Airbus A320 family, the Boeing 737 series. They are absolutely dominant in the global skies. They represent nearly 60% of the total commercial fleet today. And that dominance, it's only projected to grow, expected to reach maybe 68% by 2035. This trend is driven by a few powerful interconnected factors. One is the explosive growth of low-cost carriers, the LCCs globally. They rely heavily on these efficient single-aisle aircraft for their networks, and also robust passenger demand, especially for short to medium-haul routes in rapidly expanding markets, particularly the Asia-Pacific region. Now, Boeing and Airbus together, they account for over 95% of global narrow-body deliveries. It's essentially a duopoly in this crucial segment. And notably, the reports highlight how Boeing's, widely publicized production challenges with the 737 MAX, stemming from both regulatory scrutiny and quality control issues, have really bolstered Airbus's market position. This has contributed to Airbus reporting consistently higher delivery numbers in 2025, further kind of consolidating their lead in this highly competitive space.
So the humble narrow-body jet is truly ruling the skies in the market. It's kind of the unsung hero that keeps the global air travel system moving, especially for the budget-conscious traveler. What about the larger aircraft then, the wide bodies? And what does this narrow-body dominance, coupled with the supply shortages, mean for the age of the planes we're actually flying in? That seems critical.
Yeah, so wide-body jets, the larger twin-aisle planes like the Boeing 777 or Airbus A350, they make up a much smaller proportion of the fleet by quantity, about 19.4% of the active fleet. However, they're disproportionately important in terms of capacity and reach. They account for almost 40% of available seat kilometers, or ASK, that key metric for airline capacity. This is simply due to their higher utilization on longer routes, greater average distances flown, and significantly higher seat capacity. This segment, too, is almost completely dominated by Boeing, holding about 60% of the market, and Airbus with 40%. It just reflects the enormous development costs and technical complexity involved in making these long-haul giants. Then the smallest segment comprises regional jets and turboprops. These account for about 23% of the global commercial fleet in terms of active and stored units, but really only a tiny 3% of ASK. This group is also characterized by having the highest average aircraft age, around 18 years compared to the overall fleet average, which was 14.8 years at the end of 2024. They also exhibit the lowest renewal rate, meaning older models are sticking around much longer. Interestingly, this is the most diverse segment in terms of manufacturers. It reflects a wider range of regional needs and, less intense competition from the big duopoly. Now, to your question about age, this dominance of older aircraft in certain segments, plus the overall supply shortage, means the global fleet is getting older, quite significantly and rapidly. A critical consequence of these ongoing OEM delivery shortfalls is the rising average age of the global fleet. It's climbed to 13.4 years as of 2025. That's up from 12.1 years in 2024. And other analyses put it even higher at 14.8 years compared to a historical average of about 13.6 years at the end of 2024.
Wow, over a year older, on average, just 12 months. That's a really significant shift, a rapid acceleration of fleet aging. This isn't just an abstract number, is it? It implies very real consequences for airlines, for us passengers, and even for the environment. What are those implications?
Indeed, the implications are profound. This aging fleet, directly caused by the record order backlog and those persistent production delays, has created what the reports are calling a supercycle for maintenance, repair, and overhaul, MRO. This market, which services and repairs aircraft, is projected to reach a record $119 billion in 2025. What this means in tangible terms is that maintenance hangars are, bursting at the seams. Skilled aircraft mechanics are in incredibly high demand. Airlines are scrambling for spare parts, all of which creates bottlenecks that can delay flights and significantly push up operational costs. Airlines are effectively compelled, forced really, to extend leases on older, less fuel-efficient aircraft simply to meet passenger demand because they just can't get new ones. This naturally leads to higher operational costs, increased maintenance frequency, and crucially, higher fuel consumption. Now, for lessors, this trend is a bit of a double-edged sword. It certainly boosts the value of their midlife portfolios, right? Makes older planes more valuable than ever, but it also creates potential maintenance liabilities and greater complexity in managing asset depreciation. It really underscores the importance of having robust asset management strategies to mitigate these risks. And another consequence, directly impacting those global environmental goals, is that the long-standing trend of improving fuel efficiency has, well, effectively stalled. In 2024, fuel consumption per available ton kilometer, or ATK, remained flat compared to the previous year. This is a significant and frankly worrying break from the steady annual improvements we'd seen since the early 1990s, where efficiency consistently got better year over year. While the next generation aircraft, which make up about 26% of the fleet in 2024, up from 11% in 2019, they do offer substantial improvements in fuel burn, typically 15–20%. Their positive impact is just diluted by all these older models staying in service much longer. It prevents aggregate fleet-wide efficiency gains. So despite advancements, the average plane you fly on isn't getting greener as quickly as it really should be.
That's a fascinating and, worrying point for the industry's sustainability goals. So, despite all this demand and the aging fleet, what about aircraft in storage? You'd think with such a severe shortage, literally every available plane would be flying, but the reports indicate otherwise. What's the story there? Is that just the really old stuff?
You would certainly think so, but the picture is, as you said, complex, nuanced. We still have elevated storage levels. Approximately 15% of the global fleet remains in storage, and this is well above the 2010-2018 average, which was around 11.8%. So it indicates a structural anomaly. Regional aircraft, particularly older models like the CRJ and ATR families, they exhibit the highest storage ratios. This often reflects structural shifts in regional markets, maybe pilot shortages, infrastructure limitations, things that lead airlines to consolidate routes or upsize to larger narrow-body aircraft where they can, and further compounding the capacity reduction, the fact that another 2% of the global fleet is actually grounded due to engine-related issues, particularly with the PW1000G series, which has faced well-documented reliability challenges. These engine groundings just remove valuable capacity that would otherwise be flying.
So it's not just stored, but grounded as well. That's even more capacity out of action. Is there a distinction in the type of stored aircraft then, or some just waiting for parts?
Absolutely. There's a critical nuance here. Many of the regional aircraft currently in storage are significantly aged, often 20, 25, even 30 years old. And they've reached a point where their economic viability for a return to service is really questionable. This means the overall stored fleet share might actually be inflated by planes that are effectively retired, but just not officially classified as such yet. The share of aircraft parked for over 5 years has reached an unprecedented level. That indicates deeper structural shifts, like maybe diminished resale viability, or perhaps strategic asset holding just for parts cannibalization. But in stark contrast, the short-term storage segment planes parked for less than a year, maybe for minor maintenance or seasonal adjustments, that segment is minimal. The reports unequivocally highlight that virtually everything that can fly is flying. Any aircraft that can be economically brought back into service quickly is already in the air, which just underscores the extreme demand for capacity.
Okay, so it's truly a tale of two storages. Some planes are probably gone for good, just taking up space on paper, while others are just waiting for a quick fix or an available engine to get back into action because demand is so incredibly high. It really underscores the desperation for capacity in the short term. Airlines willing to reactivate pretty much anything viable.
Precisely. And this leads directly to what we're seeing in terms of fleet utilization. Given these constraints, airlines are pushing their existing fleets to the absolute limit. Fleet utilization across the global commercial aircraft fleet reached record levels in 2024. This surge reflects the intense operational pressure on airlines to maximize output from every single available aircraft amidst those persistent delivery delays and constrained capacity we keep talking about. It's a clear sign they're squeezing every last bit of available seat mile capacity out of their planes. However, it's important to note, it's not an equal recovery across all segments. Utilization of regional jets and turboprops, for example, remains below historical levels. This is largely due to pilot shortages hitting regional routes and cost pressures pushing airlines to consolidate frequencies and upsell passengers to larger narrow bodies where possible, often bypassing smaller regional hubs. But despite this unevenness, the average utilization, measured in available ton kilometers, or ATK, per active aircraft, that reached an all-time high of 54,000 ATK in 2024. which is well above the historical average of around 47,000 ATK we saw between 2010 and 2018. This increase reflects not just higher flight hours per aircraft, but also a strategic shift towards larger, more capable next-gen aircraft. Even with the same flight hours, they can generate more ATK because they typically have 5–10% greater payload capacity.
Got it. Okay. So every available plane is working incredibly hard, literally flying more and carrying more than ever before. But what does this intense demand and limited supply actually mean for the price tag? And more importantly, maybe the monthly lease payments on these aircraft, especially when we consider new versus older models. Are airlines just paying a premium for absolutely anything that flies right now? Mid-over-3 aircraft valuations and lease rate dynamics, a shift in market paradigms.
You're absolutely right. The supply-demand imbalance has dramatically influenced lease rates right across the board. And in some, well, truly surprising ways. For new generation aircraft, these are highly prized, obviously, for their superior fuel efficiency, advanced tech, reduced emissions. We're seeing premium rates. They reflect just how desirable they are. These are the planes airlines want. So, for example, the typical monthly lease rates for brand new narrow bodies like the Airbus A320neo or the Boeing 737 MAX 8, they're running approximately $400,000 per month. These are the workhorses, right? Short to medium haul routes. The slightly larger, market-leading Airbus A321neo, with its extended range and capacity, commands even higher rates, around $460,000 per month. Now, these figures represent significant investments for airlines, no doubt, but they're willing to pay for the operational savings and, the passenger appeal of these advanced models. When you look at wide-body aircraft designed for the long-haul intercontinental travel, the rates jump significantly. Higher acquisition costs, more complexity. A new Boeing 787-9, for instance, leases for about $1.05 million per month.
$1 million. Wow.
Yeah. While a new Airbus A350-900 commands approximately $1.14 million per month, these exceptionally high rates are sustained by the strong recovery in long-haul international travel, and again, that immense order backlog we discussed, which stretches delivery timelines way into the future. It creates a definite lessor's market for these coveted aircraft.
Wow, yeah, over $1 million a month for a wide body. That's a serious commitment, a huge line item on an airline's budget, but really shows just how much airlines value that efficiency and cutting-edge tech right now, especially when older planes are costing them more in fuel and maintenance. It's a trade-off they're clearly willing to make.
It absolutely does. It underscores the economic imperative driving these decisions. But here's where it gets even more fascinating and, frankly, defies traditional logic. The unexpected strength of lease rates for previous generation aircraft. This is a critical and durable trend highlighted in the reports. Midlife Boeing 737NGs and Airbus A320ceos. Planes which, under normal market conditions, would be depreciating steadily, potentially nearing retirement. They are still commanding surprisingly robust monthly lease rates. We're talking $230,000 to $250,000. This phenomenon directly defies traditional asset depreciation models, where an asset's value typically declines significantly with age. The underlying cause, once again, it's those persistent OEM production delays. These delays force airlines who are desperate for capacity to extend leases on their older, less efficient, and typically more maintenance-intensive aircraft just to meet burgeoning passenger demand. This robust, kind of artificial demand for older assets creates this feedback loop that has kept their lease rates at or near their peak. It represents a significant and durable shift in asset valuation that, well, few predicted a few years ago. And similarly, previous generation wide-body aircraft have also experienced a significant rebound in value and lease rates. A midlife Boeing 777-300ER, for example, now commands a lease rate of approximately $450,000 per month, while a comparable Airbus A330-300 is around $330,000 per month. These are not insignificant figures for planes that aren't exactly state-of-the-art anymore.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it means the global aircraft shortage isn't just affecting the price of new planes, it's fundamentally reshaping the value proposition of the entire existing fleet. From the newest wide-body down to the oldest narrow-body still flying, airlines are essentially paying significantly more for older, less efficient aircraft than they would in a balanced market, which directly pushes up operational costs across the board. This must make the decision to lease even older planes a constant, challenging calculation, balancing immediate availability against escalating cost and the urgent need to meet passenger demand. It's not an optimal choice for efficiency, clearly.
Exactly right. It's a very tough spot for airlines, no question. Now, let's maybe touch on air cargo and passenger to freighter, or P2F conversions. This has been a high-growth segment, especially with the e-commerce boom, right? But how does it fit into this strategic tension for lessors, given the current market dynamics we're seeing?
Yeah, air cargo is certainly a high-growth segment. projected to have an impressive compound annual growth rate, something like 13.5% from 2025 to 2034, largely fueled by the relentless expansion of e-commerce and global logistics. It's huge. As of mid-2025, the global freighter fleet is substantial, over 1,400 wide-body and more than 800 narrow-body freighters. This is a vital artery for global trade. However, the P2F conversion market, taking passenger planes and converting them into dedicated freighters, has experienced this curious short-term slowdown in 2025. The reports note only 15 Boeing 737-800 conversions were completed this year. And the reason? It's directly linked to what we just discussed: the exceptionally high lease rates and strong demand for mid-life aircraft in their passenger configuration.
It's simply more immediately profitable for lessors to keep these planes flying passengers for now, rather than incurring the significant cost and time needed for a freighter conversion. There's a strategic market gap for the long term that converted aircraft are uniquely positioned to fill. Delays in new factory-built freighters, like the eagerly anticipated Boeing 777-8F, which is now delayed until 2028. That means there's a significant void in the supply of purpose-built cargo aircraft. This creates a long-term opportunity for converted aircraft as demand for dedicated freighters continues to surge with global trade patterns.
So lessors are kind of caught, aren't they? Between immediate, robust profits from keeping planes in passenger service and the long-term high-growth potential of cargo conversions. That sounds like a really tough balancing act, where short-term gains might actually be delaying a necessary and profitable long-term shift for the industry. They're kind of walking a tightrope, it seems.
They absolutely are. It forces lessors to carefully weigh the immediate, pretty much guaranteed profitability of the passenger market against the capital-intensive, but potentially highly rewarding long-term strategic play in the cargo sector. This is a strategic decision that will significantly shape their future portfolio mix and their positioning in the global logistics network. No doubt about it. And beyond just the raw supply and demand for specific aircraft types, there are several other crucial macroeconomic and financial factors affecting these lease rates and valuation dynamics. The severe supply-demand imbalance, of course, is paramount. This is primarily due to persistent OEM production delays, which are attributed to this complex interplay of factors: lingering supply chain disruptions, labor shortages across the manufacturing ecosystem, geopolitical tensions impacting material flows and manufacturing locations. Boeing's ongoing struggles with stabilizing production for both the 737 MAX and 787 programs, specifically, have been particularly impactful. They've created a vacuum that lessors have been uniquely able to fill, further solidifying their market position and pricing power. Another significant factor is robust airline profitability. IATA, the International Air Transport Association, projects airlines will generate a healthy net profit, about $36.6 billion in 2025. These healthy profit margins, fueled by strong demand and capacity discipline, well, they enable airlines to absorb higher lease costs, which in turn supports the lessor's continued pricing power and strong financial performance. And finally, the rebounding aviation finance market, particularly the resurgence of the aircraft asset-backed securities, or ABS market, that provides lessors with diversified and potentially lower-cost funding. This mechanism, pooling aircraft leases into tradable securities, attracts institutional investors. Its robust activity gives lessors a significant competitive advantage in acquiring new assets and expanding their fleets. It helps fund all this growth.
Right. It's clear the demand is there. Airlines are perhaps reluctantly willing to pay, and the financial markets are definitely eager to support the lessors. But what's really going on behind the scenes with the manufacturers themselves, Airbus and Boeing? Are they actually ramping up production to meet this demand? Or are they still struggling? And how are their individual challenges contributing to this really tight supply situation? Winning for the aircraft shortage, quantifying the challenge, and looking ahead.
Well, the reports highlight a truly divergent performance between Airbus and Boeing in 2025. And frankly, it's a frustrating one for airlines. Overall, it's a very mixed and challenging picture. If you look at July 2025 deliveries, for instance, Boeing managed to deliver 48 aircraft. Airbus delivered 67. So that clearly shows Airbus's stronger pace, although, it's still challenged. However, even Airbus, despite its relative strength, faces a significant challenge to meet its own ambitious 2025 delivery target of 820 aircraft for the year. After averaging only about 53 deliveries per month in the first 7 months, Airbus needs to deliver over 89 aircraft per month for the rest of the year to hit that goal. Now, while that's not impossible, it's an extremely steep ramp up. It requires sustained, flawless execution. It just underscores the difficulties even the best performing OEM is facing right now. Boeing, on the other hand, They're still very much focused on stabilizing their production rates, particularly for the crucial 737MX program, which, as we know, has been plagued by well-documented quality control issues and regulatory scrutiny. The company is struggling to consistently meet its monthly production target of 38 aircraft. They averaged only 34 deliveries per month through May 2025, and as a direct result of these persistent challenges and the need to prioritize safety and quality above all else, Boeing hasn't even issued a formal 2025 delivery target. That signals continued uncertainty. Their ongoing production difficulties have left them with a significant inventory of undelivered 737 MAX and 787 aircraft just parked outside factories, directly contributing to the global aircraft shortage and exacerbating capacity constraints for airlines.
Okay, so the immediate reality of production is tough for both giants, with Boeing clearly lagging behind. Yet the long-term forecasts from these very same manufacturers are exceptionally optimistic. That feels like a real paradox, doesn't it? Can you tell us about this backlog dilemma, this huge gap between the current struggles and those future aspirations?
That tension is, as you rightly point out, the defining characteristic of the current market. It is truly a paradox. Despite the current production struggles, the inability to deliver at desired rates, both Airbus and Boeing maintain this incredibly optimistic long-term outlook. They project a need for approximately 43,400 to 43,600 new commercial aircraft over the next 20 years. Between 2025 and 2044, this reflects their confidence in the fundamental long-term growth of air travel. They believe people will keep flying more. The global commercial fleet is expected to nearly double, expanding to over 49,000 units by 2044, driven by a projected doubling of global passenger traffic. And the vast majority of these new deliveries, maybe 72% to 78%, will be single-aisle aircraft, primarily driven by the continued expansion of LCCs and that robust demand for short to medium-haul travel, especially in emerging markets. About half of this demand will be for replacement of older, less efficient aircraft. The remainder for pure growth.
So the future looks incredibly bright for air travel and for the manufacturers in the long run. But there's this huge bottleneck right now, getting those new planes built. It's a classic case of long-term vision clashing hard with short-term reality. And it creates significant pressure on the leasing market to bridge that gap, presumably. It must be infuriating for airlines waiting for planes.
That tension is precisely what defines the current market, this juxtaposition. Robust long-term demand versus significant short-term delivery failures. And that record-high order backlog of over 17,000 aircraft, that's the most critical dynamic. Airbus alone has a backlog of 8,678 jets. That represents 10.6 years of production at current rates. Boeing's backlog, 6,563 aircraft. That would last approximately 11.5 years at their current rates. Now, this backlog isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. For lessors, it's a massive, predictable revenue stream for over a decade. It essentially guarantees future business and stability for them, but its slow pace of clearing, that's the single most powerful driver of the current supply constraints. It means lessors can't fully capitalize on new deliveries in the near term. It forces airlines to continue leasing older aircraft, which drives up maintenance costs, stalls efficiency gains, and ultimately creates this unique lessors market where existing assets are valued far above their traditional depreciation curves.
That's a really stark picture. It's clear there's a severe shortage. But just how big is this missing fleet precisely? The reports mention various methodologies to try and quantify this. Can we try to put a number on it, looking at it from different angles?
Absolutely. The reports use several methodologies, and it's striking how they all kind of converge on the same conclusion: a substantial multi-thousand aircraft shortage. First, if deliveries had simply continued at their pre-COVID trend pace, we'd be short approximately 5,284 aircraft between 2019 and 2026. This is based on comparing actual delivery numbers to a baseline of historical average growth rates. Indicates a significant drop-off. Second, if the fleet renewal rate, the pace at which airlines replace older aircraft with new ones, if that hadn't dropped, there would have been 4,055 more deliveries between 2019 and 2025. This highlights that airlines would have replaced more planes if they could have actually gotten their hands on new ones.
Right, the demand for renewal was there.
Exactly. Third, if the retirement rate hadn't dropped, meaning older planes were actually retired instead of kept in service longer, we would have seen 2,397 more retirements in the same period. This indicates older planes are being kept flying, often far beyond their originally planned lifespan, purely out of necessity to maintain capacity. And finally, by examining the industry-wide order backlog, historically, it sat at around 40% of the active fleet. By mid-2025, it reached a record high of 58%. This historical deviation, a backlog far larger than usual relative to the flying fleet, suggests a structural shortage of about 5,352 aircraft relative to what you'd expect in a balanced, healthy market.
Wow. Okay, so no matter how you slice it, we're talking about a missing fleet of thousands of planes. That's a truly staggering number. And it has direct implications for passengers, right? Less choice, potentially higher prices flying on older aircraft. It's not a minor adjustment. It's a fundamental deficit in the system.
Absolutely. And the sobering outlook is that there's really no near-term solution to this, despite some very modest signs of improvement, maybe in the supply chain, a slight pickup in deliveries. The global aircraft shortage is not expected to normalize before 2031 to 2034, at the absolute earliest. The sheer magnitude of the problem, that cumulative shortfall of over 5,000 aircraft, combined with the deferred retirements and those record backlogs, it's created the structural shift in the market that will simply take years, not months, to normalize. If you consider the backlog overhang, estimated at 5,352 aircraft at the end of 2024, and current deliveries averaging about 2,100 per year for the next 5 years. Even if new orders slow to around 1,700 aircraft annually, the backlog would only normalize in 2031 at the earliest. However, if we use the past decade's average amount of orders, which was closer to 2,100 per year, probably a more realistic scenario given the projected demand, then normalization won't occur before 2034. This extended timeline reflects not just the years needed to replenish lost deliveries, but also the inherent inertia in fleet renewal cycles and the continued reliance on aging aircraft. In effect, the market is operating with a missing fleet equivalent to several years of entire global production. Now, record utilization rates have temporarily masked this gap, basically making planes fly more hours, but this won't be possible much longer. There are physical limits to existing fleets and aircrew availability. Sustainable recovery will ultimately require a significant coordinated production capacity ramp-up from the OEMs. And it would be greatly aided by regulatory clarity, especially around international trade policies and certification processes.
Okay, so we're in this for the long haul then. The shortages aren't going away anytime soon, and this missing fleet is a real, tangible problem for years to come. Given this unprecedented environment, how are the key players in the leasing industry actually strategizing to navigate all this? Especially with bigger global trends like sustainability and evolving financial markets also in play. What's their playbook for the next decade? Minute 5, strategic imperatives and future trajectories. Navigating a dynamic landscape.
Well, one key factor is that lessors are operating within a remarkably favorable funding environment right now, and that's a significant strategic advantage for them. The aviation finance market has been exceptionally active in 2025. Lessors issued nearly $19.7 billion in senior unsecured debt. That's a substantial increase from the prior year, and it signals really robust investor confidence. This financial activity is greatly facilitated by that rebounding asset-backed securities, or ABS market, which, just as a reminder, allows lessors to pool their aircraft leases and sell them as bonds to investors. This market is being fueled by falling interest rates and will heighten investor confidence in the aviation sector's stability, despite the challenges. The expected decline in overall interest rates through the second half of 2025 further provides lessors with a lower cost of capital. Now, in a market already characterized by high lease rates and strong demand, this improvement in financing conditions can lead to significantly higher profit margins for lessors and an increased appetite for fleet expansion. This allows them to be more aggressive in acquiring new assets, both directly from OEMs and through those sale and leaseback transactions with airlines, because they know they can fund these acquisitions competitively.
Right. So it sounds like a bit of a virtuous cycle for lessors. High demand drives up lease rates, and favorable financial markets provide cheaper capital to buy the very planes that are in high demand. It sounds like they're perfectly positioned to capitalize on this unique market situation. But what about sustainability? That's such a huge global focus right now. Are ESG considerations, environmental, social governance, are they truly a strategic imperative for lessors, or is it still maybe more of a marketing angle?
What's fascinating here is how sustainability and ESG have genuinely shifted from being perhaps a peripheral concern to a fundamental strategic imperative. It's really not just a marketing angle anymore. It's becoming a core market driver. 2025 is actually a landmark year for sustainable aviation. We're seeing significant mandates coming into effect in key regions. For example, the EU, the UK, and China are all implementing mandates requiring a 2% blend of sustainable aviation fuel, or F, in jet fuel. Now, while these mandates are a crucial step towards decarbonization, reducing aviation's environmental footprint, they've also starkly exposed a significant gap between the demand for SAF and current production levels. This highlights the urgent need for massive investment in the SAF aircraft supply chain, everything from feedstock to production facilities. This environmental pressure, combined with the persistent economic pressure of high fuel prices, creates this powerful, almost non-negotiable demand for new, fuel-efficient aircraft. Because the most direct and impactful way for airlines to reduce both their carbon emissions and their operational costs is to replace older, less efficient aircraft with newer models that offer that significant 15–20% improvement in fuel efficiency. And the reports show that top lessors like Avalon and SMBC Aviation, they're actively integrating ESG goals right into their core business models. They're strategically building portfolios dominated by fuel-efficient next-generation aircraft. They're developing green leasing frameworks that incentivize airlines to adopt more sustainable practices. This isn't just about good PR anymore. It's about future-proofing their assets and aligning with global regulatory trends and investor expectations.
This raises an important question that, for you, the passenger, this means future flights will likely be on newer, greener planes. But it comes at a cost, right? The industry is clearly pushing for this, which is good, but someone ultimately has to pay for this transition. It's not free.
Exactly. This shift means airlines are under immense pressure to acquire these more efficient aircraft, which, as we've discussed, often come with higher lease rates or purchase prices, even with their operational savings factored in. Those increased capital costs will inevitably be factored into ticket prices to some extent. However, the long-term benefit for you, the passenger, is a more sustainable, potentially more comfortable, and certainly more technologically advanced travel experience. It's a necessary investment, really, in the future of air travel, and the costs get shared across the ecosystem. Lessors, understanding this dynamic, are employing a variety of sophisticated strategies to capitalize on this current market environment and these future trends. A prominent tactic is the extensive use of sale and leaseback, or SLB, agreements. These arrangements allow lessors to acquire new aircraft directly from airlines, who've often placed the original order with the OEM, and then immediately lease them back to those same airlines. This provides lessors with a reliable stream of new, high-demand assets. And it provides airlines with a crucial way to free up capital and maintain operational flexibility, avoiding those huge upfront capital expenditures. Long-term leases remain the dominant market segment. They're highly favored because they provide lessors with stable, predictable revenue streams and certainty. For instance, Air Lease Corporation, a major player, has apparently already placed 100% of its expected order book on long-term leases right through 2026. That demonstrates incredibly high confidence in future demand and their ability to secure tenants for their valuable assets far, far in advance. Furthermore, the air cargo segment is also a key area of strategic focus, as you mentioned earlier. Lessors are actively developing tailored leasing offerings for freighter-converted narrow-body and wide-body aircraft. Despite that short-term dip in conversions due to passenger demand being so strong, lessors recognize the booming long-term demand from e-commerce and logistics services, and they are positioning themselves to meet this growth, bridging the gap left by those delayed factory-built freighters. They're investing in conversion slots, making sure they have the right assets for this increasingly vital sector.
Okay, so lessors are definitely not just sitting back and collecting rent. They're actively strategizing across financing, fleet composition, sustainability, cargo, maximizing opportunities in this really complex landscape. What an incredible deep dive into an industry that, most of us barely think about. But what does all this ultimately mean for the future of air travel and for, you, the passenger? What's the ultimate takeaway from this fascinating deep dive? Outro. So to recap this really illuminating deep dive, we've uncovered an industry firmly entrenched in what they call a lessor's market, driven by these unprecedented supply constraints from aircraft manufacturers. This has led to the truly unexpected and robust performance and high lease rates of older aircraft, completely defying traditional depreciation models. Yet despite these current bottlenecks, the long-term outlook for aviation remains incredibly strong, forecasts projecting a doubling of the global fleet, fueled by relentless and ever-growing passenger demand.
Yeah, and for airlines, the primary, most significant challenge for the foreseeable future, certainly for the next decade, is navigating these severe capacity shortages and the elevated costs associated with acquiring or leasing aircraft. This inevitably means you, the passenger, will likely face higher ticket prices as airlines pass on these costs, or perhaps less route flexibility as airlines prioritize profitability on existing high-demand routes. It's a squeeze across the board, really.
Right, and for the lessors, it's truly a golden era to maximize returns on both their new and existing assets, capitalizing on this unique supply-demand imbalance. But it's also a clear call to strategic, forward-thinking investment in efficiency and sustainability. Ultimately, this benefits you through a more modern, more fuel-efficient, and potentially greener fleet in the long run, even if the journey to get there involves some economic bumps and higher costs in the short to medium term.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the aviation leasing industry, by enabling fleet modernization and actively managing this current profound supply crisis, it isn't just a financial instrument or some niche market. It's truly acting as the critical shock absorber for the entire global aviation system. It's directly impacting how and when we all fly for at least the next decade, bridging that vast gap between today's manufacturing constraints and tomorrow's ambitious growth in air travel. Without it, the global system would, frankly, grind to a halt.
Think about that for a moment. This unseen hand of aircraft leasing is literally shaping our ability to connect globally, facilitating everything from business travel to family vacations, despite immense global challenges. So the next time you look up and see a plane soaring across the sky, maybe you'll see more than just an aircraft. Maybe you'll see this complex, dynamic web of finance, strategy, and global demand playing out in the skies above. What stands out to you from today's deep dive? What will you think about differently the next time you travel, knowing the intricate dance that actually gets that plane into the air?